Hello, landlords. This is Matthew Lyman welcoming you back to the Landlord Advocates, where we help landlords become better landlords. Before we discuss the hot topic of conversation today, we invite you to subscribe to our channel. Let us know that you subscribed. Hit the like button to our video, and hit the notification bell so that you will be made aware of future videos forthcoming. Also, we ask that you look at two wonderful groups on Facebook that are very active, very interactive, very friendly, and informative to landlords across America. We are very active on two of these Facebook pages, even though we belong to many others, and that would be NY Landlords and Landlords Only. Both of those groups, like I said, are very active with other landlords and are informative and will help you, as well as this channel, to become a better landlord. As you are well aware, Senator Kamala Harris of California has accepted the Democratic Party's nomination to become the next Vice President of the United States, under Joseph Biden, Democrat from Delaware, who will shortly accept his party's nomination, the Democratic Party's nomination, to become the next President of the United States. As you saw the thumbnail scrolling through YouTube or was sent to you, you saw the question that we posed to you. Is Kamala Harris dangerous for landlords? Before we answer that question, we want to read to you about a piece of legislation that she has proposed. But before we do that, we want to tell you a comment that she made at the press conference revealing this piece of legislation that she has. And it goes like this. Housing is a human right, and that's why we need this comprehensive plan to help keep Americans safe and in their homes throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. We ask the question again, landlords, do you believe that Kamala Harris is dangerous for landlords? Well, the answer to that question is yes, she is. That passage that I just read to you, that she had at the press conference, talking about protecting their homes. I mean, housing as a human right. Well, some of you may agree, some of you may disagree, but we think the majority of you will agree when we tell you that housing is not a human right. The rights are not afforded to us under the United States Constitution. Not like the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of due process, something that landlords are not getting because we're not allowed to take tenants to court to evict them right now for non-payment or other reasons. So we don't have due process. That's a right afforded to us. But yet Kamala Harris wants to say that housing is a human right. What about the right to bear arms? That's a right. But housing is not a right. When we talk about homes, keeping them in their homes, quite frankly, it is not their home. It is not their home. Do we want them to make it their home? Sure we do. Do we want them to keep up the property and pay the rent? Sure we do. But at the end of the day, it is not their home. It is the home of the landlords and the real estate investors who bought that property. They are allowing tenants to occupy the property on a 30 to 31 day cycle of payment. Could be a year lease, a 2-year lease, 6-month lease. But whatever that might be, these tenants are obligated to pay on a 30 to 31 day cycle a certain amount of money to the tenants to remain in that dwelling. But at the end of the day, it is not their home, and housing is not a human right. Do we want to see homelessness? Absolutely not. But we do not believe it is fair that landlords are burdened with the responsibility of providing housing to those who are not paying the rent and or destroying the property, because Kamala Harris and her cohorts believe that housing is a human right. She proposed this legislation last month, and the name of the bill is, I don't know where she came up with it, but it is called the Emergencies Leave Impacts on Evicted Families Relief. How many sleepless nights does she have to come up with that name? Well, there's certain highlights of this act, this major piece of legislation that she wants to see enacted. And if she becomes the Vice President of the United States, it could happen. We need to be aware. You need to know. Certain aspects of this legislation are as follows. It proposes funds for legal assistance for tenants to protect their rights in eviction court. That's a nice way of saying that we're going to provide money to the legal aid societies, the eviction defense projects, whatever those agencies may be in America, to prevent tenants from being evicted at whatever cost, legal cost, that we can do to prevent that from happening. It's not to protect their rights. It's to keep tenants where they are and to keep landlords from evicting those tenants who are not paying and or destroying the property. Another aspect of her legislation is that landlords are not allowed to file anything with credit agencies regarding bankrupt tenants. Oh, they're not allowed to do that. So if they're not allowed to do that, when they win a judgment in court, they get a piece of paper called a transcript of judgment that shows that the tenant owes, the judgment debtor owes the judgment creditor, you, the landlord. You have to take that transcript and you have to file that with your county clerk's office in order to do what's called an income or property execution. You cannot do any one of those two forms of ways to get your money. You cannot do that unless you file that transcript. So if she says we cannot file any paperwork with credit agencies indicating that tenants owe rent money, therefore you cannot file these transcripts of judgments at the county clerks, because those are public documents made aware to the credit agencies that will see that these people owe you rent money. Is that fair? No, it's not. Is this what she means by not being able to report back delinquent rent that tenants owe to credit agencies? Is that what she means? Another aspect is that she says rents cannot be increased for at least a year. But yet, retailers can increase their costs to landlords for products needed to fix up the properties or maintain them. Insurance companies can raise rates to cover the insurance on those properties. We know the government will increase the taxes for those properties. That's a given. We all know that. So all of the expenses related to that property will be raised during that duration of time that rents cannot be raised. Now, we all know the end user of a service or a good pays for all of those expenses incurred by those providing that service to us, the end user. So here, tenants who are the end user of the property do not have to pay an increase, but those landlords do have to pay the increases, and there's nothing that they can do about it. The other aspect of this law, not law, but legislation, is that there will be no evictions of any sort for 1 year. For 1 year across America. So this tells tenants nothing can happen to you for a year. You can stay. The landlord can't do anything to you. Don't worry about paying your rent. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about that. For a whole year. What does Kamala Harris believe will happen after that year? There will absolutely be a tsunami of landlords filing evictions across the United States to the tune of tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of cases. That will create such a backlog of cases that the tenants might be 3 to 4 months before they're even standing in front of a judge answering why the rent wasn't paid. There'd be 15, 16, 18 months of no rent coming in to the landlord and not a darn thing that they can do about it. Now, one of the worst aspects of this piece of legislation, we're going to discuss momentarily. Another piece of this legislation that she has is highly detrimental to utility companies. And that will directly affect landlords as well, because some of you may be providing utilities in the rent for your tenants. We advise not doing that anytime, but more importantly, now more than ever. This piece of legislation that she has states that utility companies cannot cut off the water, gas, or electric service until January 2022. That's right, you heard me. January 2022. Or utility companies can turn off the utilities for those not paying those bills. Now, those utility companies have such major overhead, payroll, social security taxes, workers' comp, disability, supplies, materials, maintaining the power lines, maintaining the gas lines under the ground. So until January 2022, they have to maintain all of these expenses, all of these services, with the possibility of not getting 1 penny from those that they are providing the services to. How fair is that? It's not. Those utility companies are going to ask their municipalities to raise the rates. We can't blame them to offset the loss. But then again, how fair is it for those of us who pay those bills to pay the bills for those that are not paying? Because you and I both know that the lack of income coming in to those companies from those tenants and people not paying those utility bills will be passed on to those of us that pay. Again, not fair. The worst aspect of this piece of legislation is that tenants are given 18 months to make payments on the rent arrears that they owe. 18 months. So if a landlord takes a tenant to court for non-payment of rent, but yet they're given 18 months to pay it, what's the sense in taking a tenant to court? What's the sense? You're not going to get a warrant of eviction. You're not going to get a judgment for the back rent that they owe, because Kamala Harris wants to give them 1.5 years to make that payment back to you. Now, is this one that they have to pay it through a monthly payment plan and stay current with the rent? Or is it one in which they have until the 30th day of the 18th month and the 11th hour to pay all that back money to you? And what happens if they don't? The landlord presumably will have to go back to court to tell the court that no money was paid. You can be looking, landlords, at 33 to 36 months. That's right, up to 3 years of having a tenant in your property who may not be paying you any money at all. This is a piece of legislation, major legislation, proposed by now Vice Presidential candidate for the United States of America, Kamala Harris. This is detrimental. This is awful. This goes right along with 2 previous videos that we have done here on the Landlord Advocates. One was regarding Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democratic Congresswoman from New York, and Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar from Minnesota. They too, since March, have proposed disastrous, detrimental, crazy legislation against landlords. We have at the end of this video links to both of those videos that you can watch. And you can see how these 3 women have proposed legislation that is beyond disastrous for landlords. It would decimate the real estate industry as we know it. COVID-19 is already causing a lot of that, but it will cause it even more if the legislation proposed by these women becomes law. Landlords, we are here with you. We are here for you. We ask that you subscribe again to our channel so that you can be kept up to date with all of this nonsense going on, all of this, the suppression of landlords. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. Let us know that you are with us because we are with you. Landlords, be well and take care.